Welcome to Culture Meets Crypto, a podcast by Signum Growth that dives into the intersection of gaming, art, music, and crypto. Each week, Angela and Evan speak with iconic thinkers, thought leaders, and CEOs about the many new online economies and business models which are bubbling up in the metaverse.
Just before we get started, I wanted to let listeners know that an affiliate of Signum Growth Capital is an advisor to and investor in MyNFT. Welcome back, everyone, to the next episode of Culture Meets Crypto with my co-host, Evan Castelli. And today we're so excited. We've been waiting for this episode for many months. Hugo McDonaugh, founder and CEO of MyNFT, which also includes the GBM auction mechanism, and Jesse Johnson, founder and COO of Aavegotchi. We would love to start with each of you giving a little bit of background on yourselves and then also how you came together.
Sure. Well, I'll kick it off. So been in crypto for quite some time now. I think my journey started with Bitcoin back in sort of 2012, 2013, and then Ethereum in 2014. And I guess it's from that point where I got super excited by the technology. And then it was in about 2017, 2018, where I decided to start a business in it and sort of jump in full time, specifically in the world of NFTs. That started with an initial project called Cryptograph, which is actually where Jesse and his co-founder and us began to collide. And then since then, spun out our auction system as its own standalone product, which is called GBM Auction. And more recently is we're launching a multi-chain marketplace called MyNFT.com, which is due to be out very, very soon. So that's sort of just a little bit about me and what we're doing.
Yeah, myself, Jesse Johnson from Pixelcraft Studios and Aavegotchi, and been big on the NFT space for the last probably 4 or 5 years. Really, one of the first projects I met when I really was going full time on it was Cryptographs, and getting to know Hugo, and was just impressed with what they're doing with their auction system on chain. It's a perfect example of what you can do with smart contracts that you can't do without smart contracts. And really, that's always been where my interest has been when it drives me to crypto, is this idea of creating experiences and unlocking new use cases and value for users that simply wouldn't exist if a blockchain was not there to help facilitate it. And so, yeah, I got started really actually on the digital assets exchange side. I was working for an exchange out of Asia called ZB, one of the oldest exchanges in mainland China. It was, I believe, the second exchange to ever exist in China and trade Bitcoins. And that's because I was based in China for a number of years working for Lenovo. And I was moonlighting doing some really early crypto meetups and organizing their bilingual meetups in 2016, 2017. And so that kind of steamrolled into, wow, I could go full time with this. The industry was picking up and there were exchanges and opportunities. So that's where I started. But it didn't take long until around 2018 and really just realized that this thing with NFTs was going to be absolutely massive. It's digital culture, and there's so many potential use cases on the cultural side. And then you can go all the way across the spectrum to things like supply chain traceability. And so the use cases for NFTs just runs the spectrum, and there's like no way that this technology wouldn't be put to use in some way. So decided pretty much after marinating on it for a little bit, that it was time to leave the exchange and just go all in with my own NFT project, which my first foray into that was linking up with Zach Burks, who had just kicked off an alpha version of Mintable, which was literally the first no-code solution. You could go in and mint your own NFT. Prior to that, you pretty much had to have a coder or you had to know how to run some Solidity. And knew that was an important fit, right? Like the market needed that. So got on board, worked on that. We moved to Singapore, set up shop. And then I got the bug and really wanted to attack this idea that NFTs can be copy pasted. And I know it's a silly argument and there's a lot of ways to refute it, but I really wanted to build something where it's like irrefutable right from the get-go. And that was the idea of using a smart contract for the first time to stake ERC20 cryptocurrencies into the NFT itself. And so it's like a digital piggy bank. Your NFT is a blockchain piggy bank. And then you can't copy paste that. And so that was the first project. It was called BullionX, literally putting gold stablecoins into those NFTs. It was founded by a DAO. I love DAOs. So like that, there was just so much there that was perfect. And a lot of those learnings rolled and snowballed into what we work on today at Aavegotchi. So the last 2.5 years has been full-time Aavegotchi. We bootstrapped that with a bonding curve, some really cool tokenomics, DAO governance from day one, and took that idea of on-chain interoperability and composability between both cryptocurrencies and NFTs, and created Aavegotchis, these cute little pixelated ghosts. If you can see me on screen, then you would know that each little ghost behind me is literally got like a little thing in its forehead, like a Bitcoin symbol or an Ethereum symbol. And that's telling you what kind of cryptocurrency is literally inside of that ghost. And so it's a really fun project that just explores the best of smart contracts and celebrates what blockchain and Ethereum is all about. And so, yeah, been full-time on that. And we got to work with GBM and some of the really cool things Hugo's been working on along the way, because it totally matches our ethos.
That's great. And as you know, we have a gaming background and kind of come at the space from a gaming perspective. Are the ghost characters in the game?
Absolutely. So we've kind of done this in two phases. I think of the intrinsic game is the Aavegotchi as it references Tamagotchi, right? It's like a better crypto pet. We all had our crypto kitties, we loved them, but we were addressing an issue there where it felt like I didn't have a relationship with my crypto kitty. Sounds a little weird, but that's really what it was, is like there was no connection there if it's truly a pet. And so one of the things that we addressed early on was this dynamic metadata, where if you interacted with on-chain transactions with your Aavegotchi, there was a certain measurement that would actually rise, and it's called your kinship score. And so you're actually like, could climb leaderboards, or just know on the UI, it tells you like your Aavegotchi is, friendly with you, or infatuated with you, or scornful and sad that you haven't talked to it in like 3 months. So, that was the first game.
A few of mine sadly got that far, but now they all love me, so it's great.
yeah, that's good. Yeah,
I love
they're
that.
temperamental.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Tamagotchi, I mean, capturing that in crypto is really exciting. I love the concept. I'd love to just dive into GBM only because I think just to start, Hugo, we should really just define what it is.
GBM is an auction system. It's a price discovery system, therefore. The way that the big concept driving it is really that we want to make everybody a winner in an auction. So the two outcomes that can happen in a GBM auction are you either make some money or you win the asset that's being sold at auction. These are the only two outcomes. And this creates a lot more fun for everybody involved. People are being rewarded in real time for helping to discover the value of this asset. And the thing that really makes this whole thing possible is smart contracts and programmable money, cryptocurrency, digital money. And so, I mean, the way that it works from a kind of high level perspective, if I bid 100 on an Aavegotchi, for example, in a GBM auction, and then somebody bids 200, I've been outbid, and so I get my 100 back from the smart contract and a return. And that return is variable based on how much you outbid the previous person, and it has a maximum cap on the amount of return you can make and a minimum step increase of each new bid. And that's how the whole system sort of makes it possible and makes it work. I guess another way to also help explain it is if you're the final bidder and you say you bid 1,000 for this asset, then essentially the seller will walk away with something like 800, but 200 has been distributed to everybody in the bidding chain. And so what happens here is because you've created the incentive to bid, using any other auction system today, like a Dutch auction or an English auction, you'd have probably sold it for 300, 400. But because you've used GBM, you've sold it for 1,000, but you leave with 800. And so, you've really doubled your bottom line, which is what we've been seeing in general with what GBM can do in terms of finding truer value and higher price discovery. It was first implemented with our very first project, Cryptograph, which were these philanthropic one-of-one NFTs that raise funds for charity forever and that are made by famous individuals. And for us, we were thinking a lot about how we find a sort of historically powerful piece of art produced by a famous individual that therefore is not easy to price. It's almost impossible to price. So how do we price it? And that's where the innovation of GBM came up with. And Jesse's co-founder, Dan, and and Jesse at the time as well, but Dan was definitely my introduction to Jesse through BullionX, actually, what they were doing at the time. We had just launched the first few cryptograph auctions using GBM, and Jesse and Dan got to experience it firsthand and realized the power and the fun of it. And when Aavegotchi, to my knowledge, was coming to the fore, and they were doing their first releases of their characters and their Aavegotchi characters, it was clearly a perfect solution to implement in terms of making the whole experience funner for everyone. And I think the other thing that was interesting was for us, we understood that it changed bottom line. We understood that it changes price discovery. We understood that price discovery happens much faster and things are generally more exciting, and that everybody feels, that they're a winner. But the big thing that we didn't quite realize, that we didn't realize until we did it with Aavegotchi, was the huge effect it has on the community. And I think Jesse can probably talk about that a bit more, but it definitely helped with reducing the amount of FUD, I guess, that gets spread around.
Mm-hmm. So
Yeah.
just to clarify, one thing that when I really got it, Hugo, was when I saw the cartoon. Everyone's a winner, and it was the kid telling his dad, like, "Don't worry, I'm not going to win, but I'm, still going to play because I'm going to win." And so the concept is basically that the auction mechanism brings more people in, and therefore, as you mentioned, the pool goes up potentially to 800 from 400, even though you're giving away a portion of the pool to everyone who participates. So the pool is larger and the number of participants is larger. So Jesse, could you comment on the community aspect of it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was probably a year or so after Cryptograph. We had already launched Aavegotchi, and we'd actually had our first NFT drop as a first come, first serve kind of typical, open mint. And it was a success from the sense that I think it sold out in 3 minutes, and it was wildly successful in that sense. The issue was we were already a 6-month-old project. We'd launched with a cryptocurrency as our governance token for 6 months. So we had a deep, passionate community. And yet, this is kind of before the whole whitelist thing, which I also have issues with. There was really, it was a free-for-all, literally. And so we ended up with people, even myself, I literally did, as a founder, I did not get an Aavegotchi on the first mint. It was devastating. It was just pure luck of who had the best internet connection or the luck of whatever. And so it was very frustrating, and we never wanted to do that again. And about 3-4 months later, we had in our roadmap to do a second haunt, a second generation of Aavegotchis. And they had different collateral. They were, by that time, we had fully listed with Aave had come over to Polygon, whereas in the first case, they were on Ethereum. So there's a lot of new reasons to do this second haunt. We were like, we can't do that again. And my co-founder, Coder Dan, he reminded me, he said, Cryptographs, that GBM auction, that model, I mean, it's fantastic. And he remembered because he earned a lot more than me on that auction. He played it well. He did the Vitalik signed piece.
Yeah,
and he played, it's a game, right? Like, he knew the right bid at the right time. I was a little late. I earned something, but I think he earned multiple ETH on that play. I mean, he did very well. So he remembered it, and he was like, I'm going to go reach out to those guys, or whatever the case was. And unlike Cryptographs, where it's one-to-one pieces, I think one of the challenges with us was we wanted to do this for, 10,000 plus PFPs, relatively speaking. And so it got so wild, because imagine 10,000 bid to earn auctions all happening simultaneously, and everybody's running around making bids on all these. It's not one auction and we do a leaderboard. It's 10,000 standalone auctions all at once. And it just became so fun for the community. And to this day, like, if there's a GBM auction, we've also done them for our land sales for the Gotchiverse. And more recently, we just launched a new product that also uses them. It's just by far the most popular, purely on-chain crypto experience that you can imagine. And our community just responds to it because it brings everybody together for a memorable Web3 experience. And you're not going to lose. Everybody gets together and has a good time.
That's great. So I'm going to turn it over to Evan, but I just want to clarify, Hugo, this could be used then for other types of auctions, potentially, even non-crypto auctions potentially. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, the technology itself, the concept of an incentivized auction can be applied to any vertical that needs price discovery. We've started implementing it across the Web3 and the NFT space because that's where it was born, and that's where it's easiest to integrate. But there are ways of doing it for the existing world of auctioned assets, and that's something that's going to be expanding over time. But we're also playing around with other versions of GBM, something we call generalized GBM, which is in its early stages at the moment, where the same kind of concepts in different sort of implementations can be applied to fungible assets. So if you wanted to do an IDO, or you're doing a fungible asset offering, we have a way that it might be much more powerful and actually get better distribution than using, say, something like a bonding curve or a fixed price sale of these amounts of assets. It's in its early days, but it's very exciting. And I think by the end of Q1 next year, we'll have done a trial which will show some really interesting data.
Great.
Writing that down.
Jesse, I just want to go back to what you said about the kind of the minting experience and the bidding experience being so fun, because I've used tons of different minting or ways to mint NFTs, and whenever it's just using a credit card or something, it's like the most dry experience ever. So I love hearing how GBM has sort of gamified this experience for the community. And kind of going into the game a little bit more, I wanted to ask what has kind of played out differently upon launching Aavegotchi?
We started with modest ambitions. We just wanted to do a better CryptoPad and further explain or explore this idea of on-chain NFTs that had value inside of them, wrapped NFTs basically with the cryptocurrency. And that's where it started, but we did have a pretty ambitious roadmap from the start, to be honest. And that was one thing that I think we've been very pleased with the outcome. In 2 years, we've gone from doing the intrinsic game to the second part, which is what we're calling the extrinsic game. And that is the Gotchiverse itself, which is a full-blown metaverse. We sometimes call it a DeFi RPG. It's, again, taking gaming in a direction that we want to play with the things that you can't do without on-chain governance, without smart contracts. And so we're super happy with the direction it's gone. And so now we have this very robust game that I would say is super satisfying, in that we launched in June of this year, 2022. And we ship every Friday at Pixelcraft Studios. We ship updates. And it's a very different model than what's existed till now for most game studios, in that usually you build a game, you perfect it, you get it ready for going to market, and then you distribute it, you go live. In our case, we got it to a bare minimum alpha of alphas, and we started with stress tests, and like the community was stress testing like the technology for the back end, these kind of things. And then when we went quote unquote live, it was still really, really raw. And so we literally are up building the game together with the community. And I didn't know at the beginning that we were going to go this like extreme on the open source community owned aspect of this. But our hunches from the early stages of going in that direction, we just keep doubling down on them and having success. And I hope what we'll see is a new kind of model for game studios and for DAOs to come together and create really original Web3 content, whether it's a game, a film, anything in between. But it's a model that it deserves more attention, and we're happy to pioneer it and spend our energy doing it. So literally, we're building the game together with the DAO. Our mantra is Web3 games should be built in Web3 ways, and so that's what we're running with. And we are now just 6 months looking back at all we've accomplished. We have a game that can support over 10,000 players simultaneously on one instance. To contrast that with other big ticket games, usually they have multiple or regional servers, and they'll support a few hundred people on each instance. And, you and I could be playing at a very popular event that draws thousands of people, but we'll never meet because you're on server 5 and I'm on server 10. So I'm really glad with some of the design decisions we made early, where we wanted to be kind of lo-fi retro, browser based, but able to support build an infrastructure from scratch that can support thousands of players interacting with each other all in the same instance. And so we're really happy with where we are. And a little alpha in the next couple months, you're going to see Q1 of next year, probably the most viral aspect of the game go live. We've got that infrastructure down now where we can support battle mode and like bring in arenas and competition. And right now the Gotchiverse is very peaceful, but we're going to get a little bit more competitive in the next iteration. So yeah, it's been a journey. We're very happy with where it's led us so far.
I'm really curious to hear more about in-game governance and how you kind of incentivize players to, help progress the game, put in their input. Because a lot of games, they want to do that, but they get kind of stuck on getting people interested in, showing up to those talks and showing up to, the important nitty-gritty stuff.
To be honest, some of it is just, it's not high tech at all. It's super simple. It's just good old fashioned hard work. And me and Dan and I, we are at every Saturday hangout, which is kind of community gathering in Discord. We don't outsource that. We have community managers, great ones. We don't outsource that though. We are hands-on, interacting with whoever wants to come in. We have a DAO call on Sunday nights. Dan and I are also at those. So we just get rid of your weekends and spend it all with the community. And then you'll be able to get to know them and work with them. And the other part is we're constantly looking for better partners and infrastructure to support DAO decisions. So there's a lot of progress out there in the last few months. Projects like, I'll give a shout to D-Work, things like that. It's basically a Jira task board that connects DAOs, and it's amazing when you plug into it what you can do. So things like that, just leverage the technology that's being built with us with other on-chain mechanisms and bring it all together. One more fun example, it's a philosophy, is like when we first launched Aavegotchi, before we launched, the very first thing we did was a simple Google Doc. Our white paper was not a fancy PDF with a lot of graphics, whatever. I think it did have the background you have on there right now. I think that's from the original white paper. And it was literally just a Google Doc that anybody could go in and leave a comment on. And I think it had to be one of the most commented Google Docs in history at the time. It was like 2,000-3,000 comments in there, just tearing it apart. And so we didn't need on-chain governance. We didn't need fancy infrastructure, but we did just seek out that open source, like, everybody can participate right away kind of approach.
I loved what you said about community and your own involvement. And I think that a lot of Web2 companies, especially in gaming, miss the fact that the community involvement and engagement has to be real and authentic. And the fact that you're in the trenches actually building that community is, I think, really interesting and really important. And I also wanted to talk a little bit about the IP, the creation that's going to happen from the community. It might be developing, in various ways. And one of the things that we were really excited about with what Hugo and the team were doing at MyNFT is their approach to the multi-chain world. So I'd love to have you comment on that, Hugo, and then also you, Jesse. How will this evolve as we move into a multi-chain world?
For sure,
where we have to worry about IP rights.
Yeah. I mean, the world of IP will definitely, as NFTs evolve, become more and more of something that needs to be managed and worked with. We have a Web2 world of how IP or intangible assets work and how ownership works. NFTs are a canvas that allows you to program any kind of value really into it. It can be many things at once. And if you want to recognize that value from the legacy world to a world of Web3, we need systems to be able to do that and make that trackable and add permissions and remove permissions where needed. But systems for that to operate and standards for that are going to be important. I mean, for us at MyNFT, our big thing is that we want to be multi-chain. I mean, my thesis is that long term we are going to be moving into a world of lots of different chains. People are going to spin up their own layer ones much faster and a lot more easily with their own rules for their own universes that then need to communicate with larger publicly distributed settlement chains, things like Ethereum. And because of that, we're going to see, an atomization of lots of different kinds of tokens and value But if you can build the roads to have all of them communicate with one another, you're going to get an even more blossoming future as people can move their assets where they want between different universes and between different networks. So for us, that's a super important vision to get behind, and that's why MyNFT for us is natively multi-chain, and why the tech stack that we've built allows us to be able to, starting with EVM chains, but allows us to offer a place where people can essentially buy and sell, and eventually be able to mint, any token on any of the chains we support, and then be able to buy and sell them in any of the native currencies of any of those assets, all in one place, and be able to do multi-currency market orders and these kinds of things. Part of that whole process of trying to build that, we were also wrestling with the thinking of, okay, well, eventually, although it's a lot bigger problem than people give it credit, if I have a character or an asset in a AAA game, AA game, whatever it is, and I want to move it to another one, how does that actually really work? And how does that work with legacy property law? How does it work with publishers' rights? How does it work with how this thing is supposed to be used in a different world and correctly follow the original purpose of this thing? How do we stop counterfeits? So if I've got my Aavegotchi on Polygon, and Aavegotchi community creates a cool world or a mini game on Moonbeam, for example, and I want to be able to move my gotchis over there and be able to play in that game or use the functionality. Right now, that's a really, really difficult thing to do, and many people could just spin up their own version of Aavegotchi on Moonbeam and pretend that this is the real community, this is the real thing, and just mint a whole bunch of random tokens and try and pass them off. And it's difficult for newcomers to be able to navigate that potential. And so something that we're doing with the Web3 Foundation at the moment is building this migration standard that is trying to create a framework, at least, that people can use to have a permissioned IP compliant infrastructure for people to be able to move their assets between blockchain networks in a way that's trackable, follows the original publisher's intents, and creates essentially a chain of provenance between wherever these things move. It's a very long-term goal and lots of baby steps along the way. At the moment we're just starting with this standardization thinking, but I think my view is that we're definitely going to be moving more and more into a multi-chain world, and to give people more freedom as to the things they want to do with their assets, that kind of infrastructure needs to be built. I know that with when Aavegotchi started, we were looking at Ethereum. Ethereum became unworkable. You had to quickly port to Polygon. And in the future, who knows if something has to happen again, or people suddenly, jump onto another, the community builds something somewhere else, and you guys need to be able to service that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We had, full disclosure for everyone on the show, although most people who know me know, we advised the Web3 Foundation and kind of stumbled upon Polkadot back in 2018 when we were advising gaming companies on Web2 gaming companies on this idea of building games on Ethereum and Bitcoin, and it felt untenable. Polkadot as this interoperability layer really just made sense to us. And you're building on Moonbeam. You were one of the first, if not the first, that has this with this business model, I guess. Hugo, can you just talk about why Moonbeam?
So we built our own L1 essentially called MyChain, but it uses Substrate Frontier. So it's a hybrid, as it were, between Polkadot native technology and EVM technology, and that allows us to be inherently multi-chain and be able to run a really good user experience on the top end, because we can run everything through this transparent database essentially, and then send all the messages from that to all the settlement layers, whether it's Polygon, Binance Smart Chain, Ethereum, and in the future other non-EVM based chains. That's essentially the stack. And so for us, it's really been made possible thanks to Moonbeam as a parachain and Polkadot as the native substrate based relay chain, creating that base layer technology for us to then start to utilize to create this multi-chain capability. And in fact, just on that point, I'd be super interested to hear Jesse's thoughts on how you see the sort of world of multi-chain or cross-chain evolving, and whether you've got any thoughts on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I agree with what you led with, which is it's going to be a multi-chain world. It already is. There's multiple chains everywhere, and they're all getting a lot of use. And there's massive TVL and exciting innovation happening on multiple chains all at once. So it makes sense to what you're discussing solving. That's a problem that does need solving. And in our case, we have a little bit of multi-chain experience. We started on Ethereum. That's where our GHST token is still minted today. It's on a continuous bonding curve. It mints and burns on a smart contract there. But the majority of the liquidity either went to exchanges, or actually most of it went and migrated over a bridge to Polygon around the time we realized that we were going to have to delay the launch of the Aavegotchi NFTs because Ethereum gas prices were nuts. And we'd anticipated that. We always thought we would launch on Ethereum because that at the time was where all the NFT action was. And then we would, deal with bridging and provenance and all of that later. But they forced our hand. And because of the nature of needing to pet your Aavegotchi and do all that dynamic stuff, we said we're going to be one of the first major NFTs to move over to another chain. We looked at all the options available at the time and ultimately went with Polygon. And we're really glad we did. It's been a great experience over there. No issues at all. It's a great compatibility. And when you talk in terms of bridges and EVM, but it was scary. And yet, it's something I think we will eventually do again. One thing I'm very excited about in that space is if you're following Polygon, it kind of reminds me of Polkadot in the sense that they are going to be launching a lot of supernets. And these are basically dedicated chains that share some of the validators and security aspects that Polygon's already battle tested. And, Alpha Leak, it could be that there'll be a supernet that helps support Aavegotchi ecosystem someday, who knows? But we're monitoring that and researching that very carefully because it is an issue even on Polygon where transaction fees are, much, much smaller than Ethereum. There's still days where the network slows down if there's something going viral or whatever it may be. So yeah, we want to be able to always look forward, and we're not like married to one chain. We think that there's a multi-chain aspect out there for sure, and especially for something like Aavegotchi. It already is. We ended up building our own bridges so that you could take your Aavegotchis back to layer one if you so chose. And it turns out there wasn't a ton of demand for that, but we did a pretty cool partnership with Rarible early on and did try that out. And you can do it. It can be done. But I think there's a lot of room for improvement in that whole section to get NFTs properly across and identify and confirm that they're the real deal and not, a mock or a ripoff. Yeah.
Because it's such a hot topic and we're getting close to our time, I really want to ask you both about what you think about royalties, especially the difference in handling royalties for kind of general NFT marketplaces versus specifically marketplaces for in-game items and secondary for Aavegotchis. How do you both kind of approach, what's going on with royalties right now?
So I just did a Twitter Spaces on this a week ago. I have a very strong thoughts on this. And
please share.
Well, the knee-jerk reaction is it's really easy to go on Twitter and sound off and be like, "Oh, of course we need royalties. Royalties should be for everybody. It's for the people." Like it's very, of course, that's what we all want. The thing that we don't flesh out enough is why is it even an issue? And of course it's because blockchain is a race to the bottom when it comes to costs. There's this no barriers to entry, open source. If you have a royalty, your royalty is somebody else's fee, right? So if you're worried about securing your user base and making sure people continue to use your platform, you're going to be constantly undermined by competitors who just somebody's going to say, no, there's no fees over here, aka no royalties. So there's another way to solve this though, because I do want royalties. And what we're doing at Aavegotchi is it's all about creating your own, instead of like plugging into a major marketplace that's kind of generic, say OpenSea. I'm thinking, in our case, we build a kind of ecosystem that is designed to be super loyal and generate loyalty to that system, regardless of the fee. You have to overcome it with UX. You have to overcome it with community incentives. So what we have is on our own NFT marketplace, the Aavegotchi Bazaar, there's a fee, and part of it, funds the DAO treasury. So every trade happening funds the treasury. Another percent funds a very specific allocated rewards pool. So when you take care of those Aavegotchis and you climb those leaderboards, you know that you're actually funding a rewards pool your Aavegotchi is going to dip into later on. And so that's one way to do it, is to just make sure that everything is kind of a circle of win. You're trying to bring everything back home to the community. And then they get that social pressure, like, you're not going to go trade somewhere else, right? Because you're going to undermine what we're all working on and working towards here. So you want to have, the community work it out themselves with the right incentives. And real quick, one thing we've done recently that I'm super excited about is we launched a new product called Fake Gotchis about a month ago. And this directly addresses both the IP and the royalties. We basically tongue-in-cheek said, we have a very creative community. They want to draw and create and tell Aavegotchi stories all day. We noticed this over the last 2 years. We said, why don't we, instead of, sending them cease and desist orders or chasing them around, wagging our finger, why don't we just build a better product where they can come and release that creative energy? And so it's, again, that same kind of concept applying. And so tongue-in-cheek, the Fake Gotchis are community created, canonized, legitimate IP Aavegotchi creations and artwork that are minted through our platform at fakegotchis.com. And so far it's been live a month. It's going gangbusters. Like, the community is on fire. And it goes back to the GBM auctions. When we launched, we didn't have it quite ready, but just this last week we launched GBM auctions for Fake Gotchis. And so this is a new, totally new twist on the GBM, because before it was always us, the publisher, the Pixelcraft Studios, creating the auctions and saying, okay, come in and have a great time. Now it's even more open sourced, where you could go and you could make some Aavegotchi artwork today and say, guess what, everybody, I'm tweeting it out. I'm going to launch my own GBM auction at noon tomorrow, and you should be there because it's a 3-hour auction, and it's going to be a blast. And that's what's happening right now. So
Wow.
it just takes it to a whole nother level where we put the power into the community's hands, and we don't even have to really manage it. And the numbers speak for themselves. Even in the depths of this bear market, we've got a nice little hockey stick on marketplace activity, and it's all because of Fake Gotchis. And then this week with the GBMs going on top of it, it's just icing on the cake.
I mean, that is really interesting because it leans into kind of creative mode. Epic Games just recently came out and said that 40% of time spent is now in creative mode, which shocked even them. And so I think that taps into kind of this behavioral shift of people in game wanting to have a say on how that game evolves and how their characters evolve. And now in Aavegotchi, you can actually even do your own auction. That's very cool.
Yeah, I'm very happy with the direction it's going.
Yeah, I guess I can chime in 2 cents on the royalty thing. I mean, our opinion in general is that it's about optionality predominantly. It's about being able to give creators and buyers as many options as possible, which is really what this technology does. It's, freedom of choice at the heart of it. And so with that comes better innovation around the technology stack to make those options possible and viable, right? Like that they actually work. I mean, back in the day, there was a lot of chat about, royalties, perpetual income. And it was one of the big parts of Cryptograph, for example, which was super early. The whole idea was this was a perpetually passive giving instrument. And therefore, for us, circumvention of that fee would destroy the core part of it. And other things like being able to destroy it would also be hugely problematic. And so we created these little innovations in the code where, if you burnt the token after a certain period of time, it would release a function that you could call, and it would reset its code and put itself back on the market. And we also created this thing called EIP 2665, which was just an extension to 721, which basically just said you can't move this token unless you pay the fee, which is definitely on the hardest side of, like, you can't do anything until you agree to this, basically, to no royalty at all, and you being able to do whatever you want with it. And I think like many things, it's a spectrum, and it's about us, the creators, the pioneers, the builders, being able to create tool sets where if I'm a creator, I can have a choice between, whether it's ERC 2981, EIP 2665, all the other royalty standards or variations that are going to be out there, a blacklist or a whitelist, and being able to say, this is what I want out of my work. This is the goal, and I want to implement it as X, or I want to implement it as Y. And then on the other side of that, depending on how good the technology is behind that or the enforceability of it, buyers will either have to comply or will still try and find ways around it. But, if you further cement things like community pressure and social pressure, which Jesse added to, that's just, that's adding other layers. But I think there's a huge amount of innovation still to go on this, royalty or future income topic, and a lot of infra still to be built out and tested. Longer term for us at MyNFT, that's a big part of what we want to achieve, is essentially putting the power into the hands of the creator and saying, look, here are all the viable options right now, drag and drop, if you will, what you want into your thing, and it will work to the best of its ability to X and Y. So it's also about being really transparent with how enforceable things are and how viable things are, and about bringing that education more to the front, because definitely for a couple of years everyone was just running around being like, it's a game changer in royalties, and that is true, but to an extent, and the extent is being realized now, and that needs to be detailed and brought more to the fore for people, so that people get better at navigating and innovating to make those possibilities better. But at the crux of it, it's really a long-winded way to say optionality is key, and those options need to be viable.
Hugo, I really like I just love the toolbox metaphor, because it really puts the burden on the founders or the community, the founders, to make sure they align the right option or the right direction with royalties, the right policy with their community, and signal that to them, like, here's what we're about and here's how we're doing it, and hopefully you're on board and you don't pick the wrong tool to address it.
And if you're not on board, you can go elsewhere. That's the beauty of it. I mean, and that's also a big part of what Web3 does, right? I mean, in the legacy world, let's say, you don't have that optionality really. I mean, or if you do, it's kind of surface level feigned optionality. It's the illusion of choice, and it's different for blockchain and Web3 for sure.
I've got a tool to add to the toolbox, if you guys don't mind. This is a really cool
Absolutely.
one. I can't believe I almost forgot about this. Talking about royalties and fake gotchis, we also delivered a completely brand new smart contract that aligns the community to have double royalties. We call it dual streaming royalties. And what this means is the royalty can go to 2 wallets instead of 1. And so why would we want to do this? And the reason is we realize that we have a community. They're not all artists, but they're all going to get these. The way you get to mint a fake gotchi is you get a fake gotchi card. It looks like a credit card. It's an NFT. If you burn that card, that's your publishing rights. So it's tokenized publishing rights. And so, 2,500 of them in existence. So you have your cap, and it's literally an emerging art collection organically, whatever the community decides to do with these cards. And so we realized people are going to get these cards and they may not be artists. So what are they going to do? They're just going to sell them or give them away or hoard them, and it's not good. So we wanted to align the incentives here where what happens is you burn the card and you get to decide of the 4% royalty where you want to allocate it. And so the burden of the card is called the publisher. Now the publisher might be the artist as well, but they might not be. Like me, I'm probably not going to be the artist. So I'm going to reach out to somebody super talented I know in the space that I want to collaborate with. Say, look, I got this card. I'm a Gotchi fan. You're an amazing crypto artist, OG. I want you on board. Let's collaborate. I'll give you 3%. I just want 1%. We'll go 2-2, or I'll go, give all 4.
I love that.
Yes. And so that way, everything's incentivized where everybody in the Aavegotchi fan base community, they all get to play. They all get to participate. And they say, wow, I'm going to be a publisher, and I'm going to be the best publisher. I'm going to go recruit the best artists. And it's a really cool play on royalties. I'm sure there's other use cases for it, but we wouldn't have even explored or thought about that if we hadn't had to address this issue of well, people are going to get these cards and they're not artists. What do we do? And so it's really cool to see how some of these different approaches to royalties can come about. And like Hugo was saying, it's really not one size fits all. It's going to be, there's so much flexibility here with the contracts.
Well,
I think that's a really creative way to integrate collaboration into the game mechanics. I mean, I'm going to use that as an example. I love it. Sorry, Hugo, what were you saying?
No, just following on that in terms of saying that, I mean, that's the point of the technology, right? I mean, that's, it's programmable incentives, it's programmable ownership, it's programmable experimentation, and that's the nature of it. And so, being able to think about royalties will come from a different direction, which is also what I love about Jesse and Dan and Aavegotchi and the rest of the team. Like, they're definitely, in our opinion, like, ruthless innovators. Like, it's always about bringing out new stuff, interesting stuff, being in so many ways the first to putting out new experiments and being able to have this beautiful test bed because of the activity of their community to be able to do those things. And it's, it doesn't surprise me at all that this idea of, using a dual royalty stream or a splitter that incentivizes lots of different potential activity to germinate naturally within their community. And I mean, that's really the big point of this technology, is you can start creating all of those new models in way more of a lightweight fashion and playing with incentives, tokenomics, the whole stack of crypto in ways that we just can't do with many of the tools that we have in a world before that. Yeah,
I'm going to go to both of you for last words and also a glimpse into 2023 for both of you. Exciting things for us to watch. And then Jesse, what is that called? I definitely want to put that on the radar screen, that mechanism. So I'll start with you.
Sure. It's you go on Twitter, just hashtag dual streaming royalties. It's a bit of a long hashtag, but that's what we've got. You'll see some commentary on it if you search that. And then it's fake gotchis that constantly is showing off this stuff. So yeah, definitely happy to see more people look into that and learn about it. And I think it's got so many more use cases and ways to apply it that we just haven't explored yet. We've talked internally about submitting it as an EIP and trying to get something more standardized out there, for more generalized for anybody building to be able to use. And we'll see if we have enough room on our plate. We would love to make room for that in 2023. So we'll see. And then, going forward for the, heading into next year, the DAO is super strong. We have weathered the storm really well in terms of this bear market. Part of it is because our bonding curve is super unique. Our tokenomics are unique in that it's a collateralized governance token. DAI stablecoins actually back a certain percentage of the token itself. It would cost money to mint it. Most tokens are minted for free, right? You just it's a one-time push of the button, and it's air behind it. But in our case, it literally requires human energy going in there, P2P, depositing DAI to mint each one on a sliding price scale. And so that has paid off really well for us, because the token has, it's off all-time highs, but the community is intact. Nobody got wrecked. There was no crazy volatility. We joke we're half a stable coin, so literally we have a stable coin behind it. So, that being the case, we have runway and we have more infrastructure than ever before for the DAO to start building out their own games, their own experiences within the Gotchiverse. There's one called Gotchi Miners I can give a shout out to. It's been in development for almost a year, and they're real secretive. They won't even tell me about it. So I'm just looking to see what they bring to the table.
Watch for that.
Yeah. And so I'm just super bullish on the DAO in particular, and where they're going to take over more and more responsibility over time. And they have their own internal roadmap. They have 3 phases. We're in phase 1.5 still, and we're about to hit phase 2. So we joke the phase 1.5 is called the cocoon, and Q1 next year we're coming out of the cocoon, and they're going to have a lot more responsibility, and they're going to be able to execute and put more of their funds to use to start executing on some of these bigger ticket items they want to build out. So yeah, really, really excited about where that's going. And then obviously the Gotchiverse I alluded to, the arena is really, really exciting. And we couldn't have done it 3 months ago because we weren't there yet. We couldn't support 10,000 people shooting and hitting and doing all this stuff. Now we're there. And so we can start actually delivering on the fun factor a bit more. Whereas previously it was more of a farming and social game. Now it's going to start layering with more combat, more competition. And I can't be more excited about what that means for, onboarding and better UX and just generally everybody will have something to do in the Gotchiverse.
We're excited about it. We're definitely going to play, right, Evan?
Yeah.
Great. Hugo, where do you? Yep,
Yeah,
we will.
I guess echoing similar things. I think that obviously the bear's been tough on a lot of people, and so it's but it's also equally been an evolutionary thing. I mean, having been in the market for a while, it was like DeFi summer back in 2017, 2016. It was the same. Like suddenly there's a whole bunch of air. I mean, the NFT PFP world went totally nuts. Most of it was speculation, and then a lot of that is going to die away, and we're going to start seeing the long tail of this technology, and we're going to start seeing real innovation happening on top of this technology that leads to like long-term value accrual and new models and new interesting things that can occur. I think Aavegotchi is a great example of that. It's an NFT project with so many other pieces attached to it that's here to stay, and a lot of the builders that are in this space doing things like that are going to start coming more and more to the fore as the rest of the noise begins to die away, which is just natural cycle evolution of new markets. And so it's going to be nice to see that happen. And I'm actually, bears are not quite as heady or as crazy, but they're really, really important. And if you're built on the right kind of foundations, it's key. And so we sing a lot from that sort of hymn sheet. For us specifically, as I said, like GBMs being rolled out in new kinds of implementations that can apply to other assets, not just non-fungible assets, is something that we're exploring, which we're super excited about. Definitely the growth of the GBM model in general across the space we're looking at, and lots of people are coming in thick and fast now to start implementing it and experimenting with it, because obviously it's super powerful. And for us with MyNFT, launching that in beta hopefully next week, and from there it's going to be hopefully in beta probably for a month or so, and then we're going to start coming out of that, adding new networks and bringing in lots and lots of new iterations over time. And long term, really about looking at new kinds of assets that we can bring on chain. So again, taking NFT technology and applying it to other verticals that could do with the technology. Markets that have bad price discovery, bad information asymmetry, bad liquidity, bad authenticity or provenance issues. Applying that technology via an interface, which our platform wishes to be the interface, that can unlock lots more value in those markets. So longer term, that's what we're interested in. And so I think next year, watch this space. I guess we'll start to see a bit more of that.
Great. Well, thank you both so much, Hugo McDonaugh from MyNFT and Jesse Johnson from Aavegotchi. Really appreciate the time. I've learned a lot. Evan, we are definitely going to host some playtime with the new version of the game, and especially the battle mode. Sounds a lot like it's going to be a lot of fun. So thank you both for coming, and thank you, Evan.
Pleasure. Thanks.
Thanks for having us.
That was such a fun episode, Evan. There's so much we could recap, but Hugo and Jesse both highlighted the importance, especially in this downturn, of ruthless innovation and giving users the ability to experiment and be creative. This is a key trend in gaming that we believe in strongly at Signum Growth. It's this idea that creators, including developers, are moving to the front of the line. Players want to add to the outcome. They want to add to the content creation themselves. And this should have a positive impact on the business models as well. When the content is being constantly created and improved upon by the players, it means a lower cost of production for the studios, and more importantly, as a side benefit, new revenue streams for the players. So as you know, we love tracking brand new examples of creative production in games, and Jesse provided one for us today that we hadn't heard of. It's called Dual Streaming Royalties, and it allows for artistic collabs between players and artists. Basically, they get together and design these collectible trading cards, and then they share in the royalties together also.
It was also great to hear Jesse describe how they actually found the GBM auction mechanism. because he used it in a real MyNFT auction. He used the technology, and then later reached out to Hugo and the MyNFT team if they could integrate it into the Aavegotchi in-game auctions. And what's really cool about GBM is that everyone really is a winner, because more people are participating because they know that they're going to get something at the end of it. So ultimately, the final prize pool is much bigger for the seller, even though they're giving up a portion of the prize pool to all the participants.
Yep, exactly. Check out the show notes for the graphic that I mentioned, because it really helped me understand the GBM auction mechanism. And also, thank you all so much for tuning in to the 9th episode of Culture Meets Crypto. Thank you to my co-host, Evan Castelli. And of course, a big thank you to Hugo McDonaugh from the MyNFT and GBM team, and to Jesse Johnson from Pixelcraft and Aavegotchi. Thanks so much.